Ever been to one of our meetings, we usually meet in the band room in the morning. That is not going to happen this year for obvious reasons. So we're making the best of this. And I think this actually might be one of those things that sticks around. It's one of those things you can watch live if you would like. You can pull it up tomorrow or the next day. You can watch it with your student. So I think this might actually work. So thank you for being here with us and welcome. I am Kelly Keene. I'm one of the school counselors at the high school, and with me tonight are Miss Holzer, Miss Rivera, Miss Marks, and Mr. Altman. So before we get started, I wanted to just go over a few things. There is a chat, and I believe you all have access to the chat. So one of the probably more informative parts of our meetings tends to be the question and answer at the end. Parents always bring up great points and questions that we maybe didn't cover. So feel free to mention something in the chat, ask a question, and we will get to it at the end. Okay, so sit tight and we'll get to it at the end. Some other things that I wanted to talk about are some of the ways that the high school counseling department is trying to increase our communication during these very crazy times. So some of the things that we've done over the last few months is we started a Facebook page, an Instagram page, and we also have our own YouTube page. The YouTube page will carry majority of the meetings that we do. We are going to record them all. So that's actually something else I wanted to mention. I don't believe any of the parents are on the screen right now, but if you're very concerned about being recorded, which none of you are right now, but if you don't want to be recorded, just turn off your camera because we are going to post this to the YouTube channel, okay? All the YouTube channel, the Facebook, and the Instagram are all at TZHS Counseling. Okay, so miraculously, we got all of them on the same page. Next is the dreaded emails that I know you're probably being inundated with and maybe are not loving. I personally am someone that misses the days of the dittos in the backpack. For some reason, that was just always easier for me. You know, once you get all of these emails, it starts to get a little overwhelming. So we apologize for that. But most especially during senior year, those emails are the most important. That is probably where the timely information will come through. And I'm referring specifically to your email as parents. But if you could really help us encourage your students, your son or daughter, to check their emails on a regular basis. And when I say emails, I mean their school email. So we send out a lot of information through their school email that they will need for senior year. So please try to encourage them to check their emails as often as possible, and you kind of need to as well. Okay, next, we plan on giving you a lot of information tonight. It can tend to be a little overwhelming because there's a lot to know about the college process, but something that we want you to know is that you don't all need to be on the same page. So you may be online at Starbucks or Dunkin' and you hear someone else talking about how their child has already completed the common application, already sent in their applications, they already have their bedspread, they already have their toiletries, they're good to go. That's a little outrageous. You don't need to be that far ahead of the game right now. That's why we have this meeting now, is to try to get everybody moving in this process, because we understand how overwhelming it can be. And the last thing that we want to happen is to stress families out, to have families panicking. So please, whatever you do, don't listen to your neighbors. Don't listen to the people online at Dunkin' Donuts. Everybody has their own timeline. And if, as you're listening to this meeting, you get a little overwhelmed, just reach out to us, okay? If you don't even know what a Common App is before tonight, that's perfectly fine. You can reach out to us tomorrow. We will set up a meeting and we will walk you through that process. That is what we are here for. Even though we're not doing lots of in-person sessions, we can do Zoom calls. We can do whatever you need to kind of get you back on the right track. Okay, so like I said, everyone's in a different place. That's okay. The one thing we do kind of want to recommend is that this is a really good time to get moving. So if maybe you haven't done anything yet, or your son or daughter hasn't done anything yet, and you're anticipating them applying to quite a few colleges this fall, this is the time. So let's let this be kind of the beginning of the experience, and at least starting with some conversations. Last Friday, we sent a pretty extensive email to all of the seniors. It described the entire college process, so that could really be a very good way for you to start talking to your student about what needs to be done. You can ask them to pull up that email and get moving with that. Another thing that I always want to mention during these meetings is how important it is to encourage your student to start self-advocating. Now, one of the best ways to encourage a teenager to start self-advocating is for the adults to take a step back a little bit. So they really should be steering this ship. It is always a little concerning when the parents are doing everything and the students seem pretty disinterested. This is really a good year to grow your students' autonomy and to help them learn how to ask for things themselves and to teach them and show them how to do things on their own. Because ideally, if this whole process works out, many of them will be away. And if, you know, colleges are open and the world gets back to normal, many of them will be away and taking care of themselves. So it's a really good year to test those waters and to ask them, how about you go see your counselor and do X, Y, and Z, or why don't you get started on your Common application, and really see how far they can go and start advocating for themselves. As always, we can't say this enough. We are here for you. Even though this year is a little different, we are still here. All you have to do is reach out, email us, call the office, set up an appointment. We will walk you through anything. If you start hearing people talk about certain things that you haven't heard about yet, just give us a call and we'll help steer you in the right direction. I think that's really, we want this to be a fun time for you, not an extremely stressful time. And the way to probably achieve that is to start early and take it slow and have some nice table conversations with your child about what they want and what you want, and include us in any way we can help. So please reach out, email, call the office. We're here for you. I am now going to pass it on to Ms. Holzer to continue the college process.
Okay. Hi, all. So I'm going to spend some time tonight talking about the overview of the mechanics of the process of applying to college. As Ms. Keene said, we hope students can be in all different places in this process right now. Some might be continuing their research on colleges, developing that list, still determining where it is that they might want to apply to attend next year. And some students might be getting ready to fill out and submit applications. So it's okay to be across the spectrum right now. So I just wanted to reiterate that. When students actually do apply to college, they're going to be responsible for completing the application in its entirety. And the application most commonly used is the Common Application. Common Application has over about 900 colleges on it. All of the SUNY schools are included. And the application is broken down into 6 individual sections. And then you go a step further to complete supplemental materials and questions specific to the colleges that students are applying to. Common App, while it's the most widely used, is not the only application. There's also an application that's increasing in popularity called the Coalition application. And then there is also colleges that still use individual applications that can be accessed right from their website. And then there's also the CUNY colleges that use their own application management system, and then also the local community colleges, which use their own applications, also accessed on their own websites. So while we're spending a lot of time speaking about Common Application because it's the most widely used, there's a number of different application management systems that students might come across in this process. All of these applications have a lot of similarities and overlaps, so speaking to the Common Application covers a lot of what's included on the other application types as well. So the Common Application, again, is broken down into the profile section, the family section, the education section, testing, activities, and writing. The bulk of a student's time is going to be spent completing the activity section and the writing section. And back in March, a video was created that can be accessed on our YouTube channel that really goes in depth to look at the Common Application and answer some questions that might come up for a student along the way while the student is filling it out. That was intentional to say while the student is filling it out. Because that is one of the first steps in this process, is turning the application over to the student to start filling out some of the necessary paperwork in this process. While we as counselors, you as parents want to support the application process, you don't want to take over the application process for students. You want to give them as much ownership over this process. We encourage you to give them as much ownership over this process as you can and as they're willing to take on. So as they're filling this out, they might come across some questions, and they can refer back to that YouTube video. And then also in the lengthy email that went out last week, there was something called a Common App tip sheet included. And the Common App tip sheet helps to answer a lot of data input questions that can be found in the education section of the Common Application. That's things like your graduating class size, how Tappan Zee High School reports ranking. We don't. Our grade scales, any questions that come up, counselors' names, email addresses, phone numbers, all of that can be found on the Common Application tip sheet that was included in the email. So the student is responsible for filling out the application in its entirety. They're also responsible for sending, for paying for, that's where they're going to come to you, to pay for the applications. Applications are not considered submitted until the application fees have been paid. And that's a very easy thing that you'll be prompted to see once a student completes and submits an application. You can't accidentally submit a college application because you will be prompted through a number of different screens, and then the final prompt will be the application fee. And then students are also responsible for sending any standardized test scores where that might still be required. And you're going to hear a little bit more about standardized tests later on, but that is not something sent out from the high school. Students, where that's required, are responsible for sending out standardized test scores from the testing agencies. What the school is then, what we as counselors are then responsible for is sending out supporting documentation. And while students are primarily navigating these application management systems, we are also navigating Naviance. And Naviance is the program that we use as an application management system to send out supporting documents to colleges on a student's behalf. So those supporting documents are the school profile, the student's high school transcript, which includes courses in progress, letters of recommendation, which you'll hear more about, mid-year reports, which are automatically sent to all schools that students apply to, usually in about early February. And then finally, we send reports, final reports to the college where a student decides to enroll. So while students have previously used Naviance as a college research tool, as maybe a resume building program, now we are asking them to turn it into the application management system. And again, in the video that in the email that Ms. Keene referenced was a video tutorial of how the supporting documentation is sent off to the colleges. And it's done by linking Common Application with Naviance. So Naviance, when it speaks to Common Application, is going to ask you to fill out something called a FERPA waiver. And FERPA is the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, which then by you signing that gives permission for the school to send out all that supporting documentation that I just rattled off. When filling that waiver out, the student is asked whether or not they waive their rights to accessing letters of recommendation written on their behalf. We have encouraged all students when filling that out to please waive their rights to accessing letters of recommendation. The reason we do that is because teachers and counselors will not write letters of recommendation unless the reading them has been waived. But more importantly, colleges want students to waive their rights. They want to know that the letter of recommendation that's being written in support of their application is being written honestly and candidly. Now that said, there's no risk here because no teacher, no counselor will ever write a letter of recommendation that hurts a student's chances for admissions to a college. If somebody felt as though they might not be able to write a strong letter of recommendation on a student's behalf, they would simply encourage the student to seek a letter of recommendation elsewhere. Nobody ever will write something disparaging for a student. It wouldn't be ethical, and they would just be encouraged to ask someone else. So always make sure to waive your rights when you're filling out the FERPA waiver. Once students match their Common Application accounts with their Naviance accounts, which is really just connecting those two systems and filling out those necessary forms, supporting documents could be sent from the high school. Now, how to signal to us that you're ready for those supporting documents to go out. That comes with the transcript request form. There is a link on Naviance, for whatever reason, that looks like students can request transcripts to be sent out to the colleges. Unfortunately, that does not signal in any way to the counselor that that request has been made. So there's no ding, there's no email that says so-and-so has requested a letter or has requested that their supporting documentation go out. We would have to go in every single day and check all 50 to 60 of our seniors to see if they appeared on a list. So in the interest of time and not to do that on a daily basis, we have a system requiring transcript request forms to be completed. Transcript request forms have gone completely virtual this year. So they are now an online form that needs to be completed by the student each time they are getting ready to apply to a college. So let's take a look at what this looks like. Let's see. And this link was also sent to students. So this link, the form is included down below by counselor. Once this is filled out, this will signal an email to the counselor that a request has been made for supporting documentation to go out to the college. We ask with this process that students complete a transcript request form for the colleges at least 3 weeks prior to their application deadline. There's often some confusion here because students often feel that they need to have submitted their application in order to complete the transcript request form. And that is not the case. The transcript request form is you telling us of your intent to apply to the college by a particular deadline. So if you know that you have November 1st deadlines coming up and you're already set that you're going to be applying to 4 schools, you can fill out that transcript request form now. There is some documentation, and we're going to go into that in a little bit, that we will require of you in order to send out the supporting documentation. So we do ask that you complete those requirements first. But you can submit these transcript request forms at whatever point you are ready, at whatever point you know of the college you're going to be applying to and the deadline by which you're going to apply. So you don't have to have everything ready. So for the first deadline of November 1st, we are going to also ask that when you first fill out this form, that it is followed by an in-person or Zoom meeting with your counselor. That helps us confirm that we have everything on file that we need from you. But more importantly, it puts a human element back into this process. Before March and the school closure, this process was already becoming very electronic, and it very easily could remove a human interaction from the process. We've done even more of going online and going virtual, which runs the risk of decreasing that connection even more. And what we're hoping for with the transcript request form in that first meeting is an opportunity to connect with you, with the student, to sit down with the student and get a sense of where they're applying, get a sense of how they're doing in the process, check in, ask questions, allow for questions to be asked of us. So it's very important that the first time a transcript request form is filled out, that is followed by a meeting with the counselor. We will not send out supporting documentation unless we have met with the student in person or on Zoom prior to receiving or shortly after receiving the transcript request form. Okay. All right. And I think that is enough talking from me. And we're going to turn it over to Mrs. Rivera.
Hello, how is everyone? Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to talk about the teacher recommendations, some materials that we need in order to go ahead with the process of applying to college. So of course you must check with each of your colleges to make sure what they would like in terms of the number of applications, but typically the colleges want at most 2 recommendation letters from the teachers. Some don't even want any recommendation letters from the teachers, just a counselor recommendation. So that's something that with each college, it's up to them what they will receive. We will send what we have on file, of course, but just to be safe, we ask that every student ask at least 2 teachers for a recommendation. If you were in person, I mean, this is something that you could still do if it is that you are on coming in the hybrid model and going in and seeing your teachers, that you could ask in person. But of course, overall, what we would really recommend is that you email your teachers and ask them to please write a recommendation for you. They do this through Naviance, and we also have a tutorial on how to formally request the letters from your teachers. What I would really recommend in terms of asking a teacher is that you don't necessarily have to ask a teacher where you got the highest grade in that class. I would often think about, well, where did I work the hardest? Where did I really try? What class did that really challenge me and bring that out in me? And then ask that teacher for that recommendation letter, because that teacher can really speak to your character, your work ethic, your motivation. So I think that's important for you to think about. The other thing is also in terms of if you know what you want to study. If you know that you want to major in English or in science, perhaps make at least one of those recommendations from that teacher in that subject area, okay? A teacher will only write 1 letter for each student, and that same letter is sent to all the colleges. And the teachers, like I said, directly upload their letter and send the letters to the college via Naviance. So now we're going to talk about our letter of recommendation. So as counselors, you don't have to request the letters of recommendation from us. We automatically write the letter. And as I mentioned before, most colleges, if they don't want a teacher recommendation, they always want the counselor recommendation. So what we often use to review and to be able to write a unique and thoughtful letter is the junior questionnaire. That's really important for us because it asks a lot of questions about what you identify as your skills and your strengths, what were some of your academic struggles, your academic success, and how resilient you were during your time in high school. So the junior questionnaire really allows us to get to know you better, understand what high school meant for you, and then we could write about that. It's really important as a counselor. We don't want to just write about what's on your transcript or write about scores or grades. We really want to give the colleges a perspective of who you are as a person. And so filling out the junior questionnaire, talking to who you are as a person will allow us then to write a better and more thoughtful recommendation letter. The survey for the junior questionnaire is found under the About Me tab on Naviance. It's under My Survey. So you can go right on there and fill out the junior questionnaire. Now, if it is, I noticed with some of my students that said they filled out some of the questionnaire and then maybe by accident submitted it, just make sure you contact your counselor because we can always reopen it for you if you want to add some more things onto your junior questionnaire, okay? The parent perspective form. I loved this form last year because this is my second year at Tappan Zee, and with my seniors, I didn't know them as well. So I used the junior questionnaire and the parent perspective form to really be able to write a letter about the student that was more than just a reflection on the transcripts. I got great stories about the students that I used in my letters, and I know all the other counselors also use. So this is really an opportunity to let us get to know your children outside of the school, who they are, what their dreams are, again, their challenges, and what makes them proud and you proud of them. So I think that's really important too. We really would appreciate if that form can also be filled out 3 weeks before their first application deadline, so we could use it in time to write our letters of recommendation. Okay, and finally, the resume. So the resume is the opportunity that students have to write about all the great things that they did, whether it was in school, in their community, in their home, in employment. So all these different things they could use in terms of building their resume. Some already have done their resume, but Naviance has a wonderful tool that builds the resume and where they can choose the sections that apply to them. So for example, if you are a student that didn't have employment, but you did a lot of community service, you would make sure to pick the community service section and don't pick the employment section. You want to make sure that if it is that you did a lot of clubs, you pick that. But if it is that you didn't do a lot of clubs and you worked after school jobs, or you did things in your community, all those things you can choose in sections for your resume. You can also put there your major, your area of interest. I know a lot of students sometimes say, oh, I don't know, I don't want anyone to see that because I'm not sure. No one ever in college is going to go back and say to you, you can't major in that because you wrote something else on your admission resume, okay? So don't ever worry about that. It's not binding. We also use your resume a lot to get information for the recommendation letter. It helps the student a lot when they are filling out the section on the Common App that talks about activities. If they have their resume there, then all they have to do is use that to help them fill it out. And it also is something that is helpful to get them organized. Many times they forget what they did in 9th and 10th grade. So the resume will allow them to really think about, well, what are some of the things that I've done? And many, many times they've done a lot more than they think that they've done. So that's important for them to kind of sit down and organize themselves and see what exactly they've been involved with while they were in high school. We also use it as a reference for scholarship applications. So if it is that they've put something that they are been very involved with, then we have something to identify a student that would then maybe be applicable to a scholarship application that we received. So those are some of the important things, the materials that we use, and in terms of recommendation, like for the teacher to just really give it some thought in terms of how they were the most successful in showing their skills. That's really important. Don't ever just think that it's just the grades. And for the counselor recommendation, as I said, the junior questionnaire and the parent perspective are really important too. So that's it for me too. I believe that now, oh, you know what? I forgot to ask who was next. I admit it. Was it Mr. Altman? It was Miss Marks. Thank you, Miss Marks. It's your turn now.
It's the Emmy live. We can't mess it up.
Yeah, sorry.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about standardized testing and the changes that have happened since the pandemic. So for you guys to know, test scores are not going to be on your transcript. You can you will self-report directly on your application. But so you know, we don't send test scores, which Mrs. Holzer mentioned earlier. You will have to order and send test scores from ACT or College Board. But that being said, 2/3 of all U.S. four-year colleges and universities are test optional or test blind for your class. So the number of schools not requiring ACTs or the ACT or the SAT has now reached over 1,500 schools. I want to explain very quickly the difference between test optional and test blind. So under a test optional policy, colleges still welcome test scores from students who choose to submit them and consider them a valuable data point and part of the review process if testing is available in your area. So in other words, students who do not submit results from standardized tests will neither be advantaged or disadvantaged. Many of these schools will remain SAT and ACT optional for future admission cycles. In contrast, if a school is test blind, it means they will not accept standardized testing at all. The test optional list and test blind list nearly includes all of the nation's most selective universities and liberal arts colleges. So more than 800 institutions ranked in the top tiers of their respective categories by US News and World Report do not require ACT or SAT scores. However, in lieu of scores, some schools like the University of Delaware, where many of you might be applying to, are now requiring supplemental essays instead of test scores. Among the few well-known institutions that still require the ACT or SAT are the state university system in Florida, such as University of Florida and Florida State, and also US service academies such as Annapolis, West Point, the Air Force Academy. So they need the scores as of today from you. Test blind reflects a growing trend. So currently 59 institutions say they will ignore ACT or SAT scores, even if applicants for fall 2021 submit them. So if you submit them, they are not going to look at them. The list includes the California Institute of Technology, Catholic University, Loyola, Dickinson, Hampshire, Reed, as well as our own CUNY schools here in New York. As a department, we advise taking the tests if they are available. If your scores are within the range of colleges or universities you are applying to, and that college or university is accepting scores, you should send them in. And again, quick reminder, you have to send in your own scores. And a great resource for everyone is fairtest.org. So daily they update what schools are on each list. So they're test blind, test optional. They're a great resource. So you should check them out. And I believe Mr. Altman is up next, right?
Hi, folks. I'm going to be closing things up, talking a little bit about the SUNYs and the CUNY schools, and then we'll have ample time for questions and answers. The reason why we include information about the SUNYs and the CUNY schools to parents of juniors and seniors is because it's such a tremendous resource that we just want to make sure is, that you know about and have full information about. It's a chance to get a great education at a very affordable tuition. So important to note that a public education doesn't mean an inferior education. So if your son or daughter says, I don't want to go to a state school, I want to go to a good college, or I want to get a good education, or maybe you even think that, I really wanted to dispel that notion. And there was a study done in 2018 of Fortune 500 CEOs. Half of them went to public colleges. So I think that's pretty impressive. And among those, about 5 went to a SUNY or CUNY school. So they're pretty well represented among Fortune 500 CEOs. It's a great opportunity to get a public education. So the two systems, as a New York State resident, that you can take advantage of the in-state tuition are the SUNY School, State University of New York, or the CUNY School, City University of New York. I'm going to give a pretty quick overview of both. If you really want more extensive information, have some time, we did a webinar that's on our YouTube channel, and you can go back and look over some of that information, and also kind of get a refresher of some college information. There was some information about essay writing, so I did want to point that out, and more information about the SUNYs. But for the SUNYs, it's among the top-rated state college systems. There are 4 primary university centers: Buffalo, Binghamton, Albany, and Stony Brook. They range from roughly 12 to 13,000 undergraduates, all the way up to about 20,000 at SUNY Buffalo. They have graduate programs, full range of majors, Division I sports. They're larger. So those are the 4 university centers. Underneath those, they call them the university colleges, which tend to range from about 4,000 up to 8,000 students. Some of the more familiar names are New Paltz, Oneonta, Cortland, Plattsburgh. So those are the university colleges. There are also technology colleges like Delhi and Cobleskill. They have a lot of 2-year technology type programs, but they also have some 4-year more traditional majors there as well. And then there are community colleges. So Rockland Community College is part of the SUNY system. So that's a quick overview. You can find any major really that you're interested in looking at in a SUNY system. So there's nothing you're not going to be able to get. And as you can see, look at the tuition. 4-year college, tuition is a little over $7,000, RCC $4,870. And as a quick note of comparison, I wrote down the tuitions of some of the better known private colleges and some public colleges where you have to pay the out-of-state tuition. So Boston University, if you had the over-under at $55,000 a year, you had the under and you lost. It's $56,800. That's a full year at Boston University, not including room and board. UConn, if you go there out of state, which we are obviously, the out-of-state tuition, $37,000 a year. Hatton College, $41,000 a year. And Syracuse, if you want to be an Orangeman, that one is under $55,000 at $54,200. So that's a little overview of the tuitions at private schools. So obviously you're getting a very affordable college experience. The proximity is the other advantage. The CUNY system, City University of New York, could see 275,000 degree-seeking students, 11 senior colleges, 7 community colleges. Of the senior colleges, some of the better-known ones are Hunter College, Baruch, John Jay, well-known for criminal justice. So again, you could, City College, I should mention, pretty much see any major that you would be interested also in the CUNY system, from engineering to an accelerated BSMD program through City College. So also a great opportunity. They do have housing, many of the colleges there as well. And you can see in front of you the tuition as well is roughly $7,000 a year. So also excellent opportunity. The other thing I want to mention are the honors programs at some of these colleges. So I'm going to start with CUNY, then go back to SUNY. So Macaulay's Honors College is through the CUNY system. There is a separate application for that. The deadline is December 8th. It is very competitive, probably grade point average, depending on the CUNY college you're looking at, is going to be like mid to high 90s at minimum. So they're very competitive, and competitive for a good reason, because if your son or daughter is admitted into the Macaulay Honors Program, they are getting a full ride. They're getting full tuition. They also get a laptop computer. They get a mentor. They get a cultural passport to New York City events. So it's an incredible program, very competitive, but it's available to our students. Through the SUNYs, not all, but pretty much most, the vast majority of SUNY colleges, universities have an honors program. And again, I think it is something worth looking at. And I should say also, even from private schools, the honors programs, I think, sometimes get overlooked a little bit. There can be a separate application. Many colleges now will evaluate for the honors program just based on the application itself. And some of the perks that can go along with that can be personalized advisement, scholarship money, priority housing, priority registration, honors designation. So again, the honors programs at SUNYs or private schools is a great opportunity. Think about a student that is, let's say, is one of our top students in our high school, and they're looking at the Northeasterns, the Ivy League schools, all the top schools. Let's say they get into some of those schools, which is great. It might get some scholarship money. Good chance then they may not, because of how competitive those schools are. So compare that to getting into an honors program, let's say, or Macaulay's honors, where your son or daughter would be attending classes with students that are as competitive as the top tier competitive schools in the country, but getting a lot of perks that go along with it and probably a heck of a lot of scholarship money. So wanted to kind of throw that out there. Next slide. Yeah. So where did class of 2019 go? First of all, when you look at that picture, I think to me the most striking thing is that probably east of the Mississippi is where a lot of our kids go. And in the middle of the country, there's a few kind of tumbleweeds there. And then you got the West Coast, California is getting some students. So most are going, you know, somewhere in the east or northeast. You can see a little over half attended public institutions. I can give you a little bit of a list of some of the our top sort of attending schools for whatever it's worth. I don't really even know how relevant this piece of information is. I'm hoping everybody makes up their own mind where they want to go to college based on a lot of information. But the top schools really where we get applicants are Binghamton, RCC, Buffalo, Newport, Oneonta, Stony Brook. So SUNY well represented, Manhattan College, Cortland, Northeastern, Buffalo. So that's pretty much predominantly where we get the most applications. But again, I think it's kind of interesting to know this. But I think everybody's got to make up their own mind where they want to go to school and maybe not follow where everybody else goes. It is interesting how I've been at with us for 19 years at Tappan Zee, and some schools, like over the years, they'll take off. It almost becomes like faddish. Like one school really gets hot, we get 1 million applications, then it sort of fades away. Another school kind of takes over. So there's a little bit of that mentality for whatever reason. Maybe it's just human nature. Okay, next slide, Jamie. So finances. We're not going to talk a lot about finances here because we have a October 1st financial evening. It is going to be done virtually, 7 p.m. You can see it in front of you. I would highly encourage, even if you attended these in past years, this is like, if we have must-see TV, this is probably must-see TV for us. So every year there's new information coming out. I learn something every year that I watch these presentations. Highly recommend that you view this and ask questions. Under the scholarships, the one I want to highlight is the Excelsior Scholarship, which you might have heard of. So these are for the CUNY and SUNY schools. Adjusted gross income, $125,000 or less, and it's full tuition. So something to kind of keep in mind if it fits your economic profile. And there are certain other requirements once a student is qualified this in terms of their attendance. But basically, if they're a full-time student, They can continue to maintain their scholarship. There are a couple of the websites that you can peruse also that's listed here. So that's my part of the presentation, I believe. And I think we're off to Q&A. Yep.
Okay, so I hope everybody is still with us and not so overwhelmed that they ran out of the room screaming, crying. Like I said earlier, if any of this seemed a little too much, please reach out to us and we'll get you right on track. That's exactly what we're here for. So normally this is probably my favorite part of our meetings is when parents have questions for us. We don't have a lot yet in the chat, but if anything was a question, please let us know. So I'm just going to start from the top. Does each college have their own prompt for the essay, or is it a general question? So each college does not have their own, well, it's actually a two-part question. Most colleges being on the Common Application, there is one kind of generic essay that you will fill out for the Common Application, and then you will also fill out what we call supplementals, which means you'll fill out your basic Common Application, and then you will fill out questions for the individual schools that you are applying to. In some of those individual schools, there will be a different essay prompt that they may ask you. They are not going to be as lengthy as your main Common Application essay. They are typically a shorter essay that's a little bit more about why our college, or maybe just some short answers. Does anyone else have anything else they want to add to that?
The only thing I would add is those shorter essays, we're reminded by college admissions reps that student really needs to make sure those are well-written quality essays also, and not just, well, I did my main essay and this is just going to be, I'm going to kind of mail it in for that one. So you should also put in the time, make sure it's well-written, grammatically correct, all those kinds of things.
Okay, so next question. Can your package include a letter of recommendation that isn't from a teacher? Anyone want to take that one?
So we call those outside recommenders, and yes, students can ask for an outside recommender, usually employers or coaches, to write on their behalf, but we really recommend that that be limited to one at the most. For all the time that students are spending completing their applications, and college admissions counselors may be spending 20 minutes on it. And we want to make sure that they're reading thoroughly through all of the required documentation and that we're not overwhelming them with too much paperwork. We also want to make sure that we are giving them a perspective that's going to be different from anybody else and what they're writing. So if that other recommender is going to say something maybe very similar to the counselor, or is going to say something very similar to a teacher who maybe also knows the student for a club, then that might be pretty repetitive and it might not be worthwhile. But if there's a very unique perspective that then an outside recommender could write from, then absolutely, but it's by no means required. Though the outside recommenders, unless they're employees of the school, so a coach, they will upload their letters of recommendation directly to the application system. And if students have any questions about how to do that, they can write to us, email us or see us, and we'll walk them through the process of sending outside recommendations.
Okay. Next, what is the Instagram address? The Instagram address is @TZHS Counseling, correct, Ms. Marks?
All the same. So every social media for us is the same, which makes it, sorry, there's someone honking outside. Every Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, we're all the same name.
Okay. Someone asked, how do you link the Common Application and Naviance? So this process was explained in the email that was sent to your student on Friday. We did another video similar to this, and we did a Screencastify that walked the students through that very important process. So if your student searches their email and cannot find that, please reach out to the counselor and we will resend it, because it's pretty important and we can't really go anywhere until Common Application and Naviance are linked and that FERPA is signed. So if you did not get that email or your student cannot find that email, we will certainly send it out again. Just reach out to us or call the office.
The Common App Naviance account matching tutorial is also on the YouTube page.
Oh, yes, our YouTube page.
We are fancy.
Okay, resume. Can you do both community service and employment? Absolutely. Ms. Rivera, you want to take the resume?
Yes, because, well, if you use the resume on Naviance, that's where the resume builder is. You choose those sections. So of course, if it is that they did community service, you choose community service and you put all the information about that. And if they worked, and so you choose employment as the section and you put all the information about that too. And then, like I said, the Naviance has a template and you choose your sections. And then at the end of it, you have a very nice resume that they've put together for you. Same thing if you do a resume outside of Naviance, then you will choose the sections such as education, employment, community service. You put all that on your resume.
We also get the question often, what is the difference between the resume and then the activities page on Common Application? They are both meant to show the activities that you've done throughout your time in high school. If you would like any more information on that, you can also go to our YouTube channel where we did a pretty lengthy overview of the Common Application, and we discuss the activities page, and often students will be not really be sure what they should put there. Should they put something there? Should they put it under honors? Things like that. So we did discuss that. And then if after watching all of this you still have questions, just reach out to us. We have a question. Can you repeat what is test optional? So, Ms. Marks, you did a great job explaining the difference between test optional and test blind, which is a fairly new term. So, do you want to say that again?
So, test optional basically means you don't have to send your test score, or the college is saying you don't have to send the test score. But instead of a test score being sent, they may require you to do an extra essay, or they might say you need to do a couple supplemental essays. Test blind means they're not accepting scores. So that's the difference, if that makes sense. So test blind means the college and university is not accepting scores at all.
Thank you. And
if I could just add one thing to that. If there is a school your son and daughter is applying to, and they took the SAT and ACT and they're test optional, and you're not sure whether you think they should report it or not, I would consult with the counselor. Sometimes, you may not want to report it, and sometimes you may, and it could depend on the school and the situation. So it may be worth a consultation if you have that question.
Thank you. And the website that we referred to is fairtest.org. It's not the fanciest website in the world, but it has a very good list of the most up-to-date colleges that are test optional. Someone told us not to forget SUNY Maritime. We will not. Thank you. Which SUNY is best for pre-med? Anyone want to take that one?
I think it's a little bit of a hard question to answer. There's no college major pre-med technically. It's the type of advisement that you would get at a college, and you would have an advisor that is working with your son or daughter, recommending courses that would help them get into medical school, and their extracurriculars, research, and applications possibly for medical school. So it's a type of advisement. I think that's the more typical majors for students that that are interested in medicine or want to be pre-med tend to be the sciences, biology or chemistry. Engineering is pretty common, but it could be anything. You could, your son or daughter could be an English major, but taking also, sort of a bunch of science courses or math courses and still apply to medical school. I think a college that has good research opportunities is an advantage if they're looking at the pre-med track and think they want to be a doctor. That is something that's helpful in applying to medical schools. Other than that, though, I think it should be an individual conversation with son or daughter's counselor, and talk about the different schools that might be options.
Thank you, Mr. Altman. He knows a lot about pre-med programs. his
The
son.
two SUNYs, by the way, that have their own medical schools at Stony Brook and Buffalo. So.
Okay. For a student who had multiple SAT tests canceled, will there be a way to indicate on an application that the student was unable to take the test versus having taken the test but chose not to send their scores? Will these be evaluated differently? That's a great question. Ms. Halter?
There's nothing that that signals that on the application, but there is a section that was newly created on Common Application this year, asking students to explain any circumstances that affected them during the COVID-19 pandemic. And that does not have to take on the form of a completely additional essay. I think it's just meant for notations and explaining different things. So that would be an appropriate place to put that information. And that information can also be explained in the additional information section. So Common Application also gives you a box to write anything that you felt was not covered on the application, and that could be another place to put that.
Okay. The website for the Excelsior Scholarship indicates that they are no longer taking applications due to lack of funding. I'm not sure if that is a lack of funding for the current school year. Has anyone heard anything about it shutting down?
It says they reduce state revenues and the processing of new application is pending, but it doesn't say they're not accepting.
So something that's always a little tricky about the Excelsior is that the application for your students' freshman year in college does not come out until about June or even sometimes July of the summer going into freshman year. So they are very slow on the uptick of getting out the application and any of the information. So sometimes it can lead to a little confusion because people are often searching for the application that is not yet available.
Right. Whatever's on the website right now regarding Excelsior pertains to the class of 2020.
Right.
And unfortunately, the 2021 information usually doesn't come out until very late after your senior year is over.
Mm-hmm.
Is it advisable to attach a student's resume to the Common App? Anyone? Going once?
Sure. It doesn't, you know, I would make sure that that has been created, you know, thoroughly, thoughtfully, spell checked, you know, really looked over before uploading it directly to the application. You cannot upload the resume directly to the main part of Common Application to be sent to all colleges. That is found in individual sections of colleges that allow students to do that. So where a student might be asked to do that for a specific college, absolutely. I think it gives the reader a very quick, easy read. I think a resume is actually nicer to look at than the student activities section. It also allows for the opportunity to describe activities a little bit more clearly. So I think that, you know, wherever a student has thoughtfully created a resume and not kind of just thrown something together, then that could be very useful to attach to the application.
Okay, next question. Is there a designated website or email to opt out of the SAT? I'm not, is there a designated website or email to opt out of the SAT? So we discussed the fairtest.org website that allows you to find schools that themselves have chosen to go test optional. But to email to opt out of the SAT, has anyone else got any?
Like, I'm wondering if that's asking about canceling scores, or I'm sorry, about canceling a registration already. Like if students are registered for an upcoming test and perhaps want to opt out and cancel it, then yes, there's a number to cancel your SAT registration through College Board. I'm also wondering if that might be related to the question about how to report to a school that you want to be considered test optional. And that is going to be asked on each individual college's specific questions to the college. So students will find that by going through the specific college questions on the Common Application.
Okay, thank you. And if Connor wants to ask that again. If we didn't answer the question, please resend it. We missed most of this. Will be available as recording. Yes, it will be. We will post it to our fancy YouTube channel, hopefully by tomorrow. Okay, when should students target to finish the essay? What assistance does TZ offer? So I would say that students should really be in the thick of their essay around now. Our majority, if not, I believe all of our senior year English classes do a really good job evaluating students' essays. We also, as counselors, love to read students' essays and help them. I think we feel the strongest helping them with content. We will often read essays, and while they might be grammatically great, we maybe feel that it could use a tweak here or there to show maybe more who the student is or what the student is trying to say. Sometimes we'll get an essay and it will just be amazing about someone's grandmother or uncle or something like that, but you don't really get the essence of the student, and that's really what the essay is for. So we would encourage students to definitely share their essays with us, and please don't share the essay with us 15 minutes before you're sending it in, because then we're just going to tell you it's great. Because you don't have a lot of time to adjust it, but keep us in the loop throughout the process. If you have a few different drafts that you want us to read, we would love to read them. But as far as the true grammatical essence of the essay, the senior year English teachers really help with that. Anyone else have anything they want to add about the essay? Nope, okay. How important is it to do virtual interviews, student information seminars at the schools, talking with admissions at the possible schools, all via Zoom? The easiest answer to that is very important, but I'm going to let someone else talk for a bit about why. Who's up? Mr. Altman, you're taking a deep breath. You want to answer?
Well, I don't know if this question really implies that they're only available to do it via Zoom or virtually, but just to kind of answer more generally, is having a relationship with the admissions counselors is a good thing. And if you sign up for virtual interviews, admissions events, whether they're virtual or in person, it's important for a lot of reasons. Number one, your son or daughter is getting more information about that college and learning more about that college. Two, they're showing demonstrated interest at that college that is logged by colleges, so it can be advantage of the admission process. So I would say it's very important, regardless of the format of making that connection. One of our seniors last year was on our YouTube channel. There was a little presentation. Ms. Marks and Ms. Rivera did a great job with some of our seniors last year, and one of them talked about the importance of establishing a relationship with admissions counselors and how he felt it helped him with his applications and even getting into a college. So emailing that person and being pro-helpful, I would say.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Altman. Why are some of the college visits this year not during the school day like last year and be excused from class instead of evenings? So this is due to the world that we're living in now. As you may or may not know, we have had to use every single square inch of the building to space out as many students as we can. Some of the rooms that we may have used in the past for a lot of our meetings are now being housed for students who are in the building and need space. Our study halls are no longer 25, 26 students, they are now 10. So we had to use every single space. So that was probably the most important reason, is that we really did not have, sometimes for say a Binghamton, we have 30, 40 students show up, and we just couldn't handle that this year. Also, we only have half the students in the building each week. So it wouldn't have necessarily been fair to do some schools one week and, students not have been there. So we would have had to have done many of the meeting during Zoom anyway. And really, I would say the most important factor is that we just did not have the space to house these, and the colleges were flexible and really wanted to still meet with our students, so we did it after school. I have gotten some students who are concerned because they might have an after school job, or they take care of a sibling, or a multitude of different reasons. That is okay. If you or your student are not available to be at any of these meetings, that's okay. Still find out the rep's phone information, maybe their email address and whatnot, and reach out to them that way. Just send them a quick email saying, I really would have liked to have been at your meeting at Tappan Zee High School, but due to work reasons or whatever you might want to say. And that alone will help initiate the conversation and help with interest. So if you can make it, that would really be great, because those meetings are really informative and helpful, and it helps the reps get to know the students. But if you cannot make it, just send a quick email to the contact our office if you can't find the contact information, and we'll get it to you. Okay. Was the Common App tip sheet emailed to parents or students? All of it was emailed to students. And maybe Ms. Holzer, you want to talk a little bit about why we email all the information to the students?
Well, we email all of the information to the students, one, because it goes back to the point of encouraging that they take ownership over the process, but it's also on the counseling website.
Mm-hmm. So we give you a little bit of both. But we are really trying, like I talked about in the beginning, we are very, we feel very strongly about the students really advocating for themselves and learning how to ask for help and learning how to navigate this process. But we do still have everything on the website and the YouTube channels and all of that if you can't find it from your student. I lost where we are.
As of right now, is the SAT this Saturday at TZ still being administered?
I have not heard that it's been canceled. Has anyone heard that it's been canceled?
No, it is on as of today.
Yeah,
College Board is sending something out saying to just continue to look to make sure that it's still going on up until the morning of the test.
Yeah, but I think it's as of right now, we're still good. Okay, if we already completed all of our college visits last fall, early winter, and connected with the admissions counselor, should my child still meet with the reps through the high school? I think it doesn't hurt. It's always very important to keep yourself on their radar. If it's not if it's not a big problem, I would recommend staying in touch with them. They're human, so the closest to when they're actually reading that application, to have a reminder of the student is always a very good idea.
Especially if it's a school they have a strong interest in.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I would double down and have them attend.
It's always a good idea. I haven't seen any emails about colleges visiting in the evenings. So they're not actually in the evenings. I believe they're at 4 and 5 o'clock. Is that correct?
Yeah.
They're at 4 and 5. They're all virtual.
Right.
And the information for how to access that list was also sent to students in that email. And that is listed all in their Naviance accounts.
Yeah.
There will be a lot happening in their Naviance accounts for the next few weeks. So if your student cannot access their Naviance account, reach out to us and we can give them the username and reset the password if need be. Where can we find the information about admissions count? Oh, just answered that. Where can we find the list of meetings? Oh, there we go. Just answered that too. So efficient. Okay, so I think, did we miss any questions or did we get everything? I think we got everything.
Yep.
Oh, one new message. Last year, it was on the daily announcements. Yes, I do believe it is usually on the daily announcements. We are, we'll check that, but I think the best and easiest way to look at it is through the Naviance account. So if there are no further questions, we really want to thank you all so much. I think this was a larger crowd than any of us expected. And we're really happy to be able to have you all with us and to give all of this information to you. We know it is a lot of information. Again, we hope we didn't overwhelm you, but if we did, we are just a phone call away or an email to get you and your child on the right track. So hopefully tonight we'll kick off some conversations around the dinner table about what the next steps are. And hopefully most of you will reach back out again on October 1st for our financial aid evening, which is very, very informative and very helpful. We will do the same thing where we're going to send out information about that and the Zoom link. So thank you all so very much for spending the last hour or so with us. We hope you got some good information, and we look forward to seeing you somehow in the future very soon. Okay. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good night, folks.
Thank you.